What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Everything College Basketball Podcast. My name is Peyton Burton, and today we got a very special episode. For one, no, this is the first time ever, first time in ECB history that it's just me and Trev here for now until our owner and host and our boss, Josh, gets his ass out of traffic and get his ass back online so we can do a normal show. But other than that, Trevor, how's it going, my man?
It's going great. I am super glad to man, it's March. I'm just so elated. I don't even have a word, honestly. I knew you were probably going to ask me something and just nothing came out. So I'm just going to stick with it. I'm elated, man. This is my last night in town before I head to Washington DC. We'll get to that in a little bit when we get to some conference predictions, but I'm super excited. March is here.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about it last week, how excited we are for all these conference tournaments starting. Me and my brother, me and Josh, we're heading to the OVC title game this Saturday, so it should be intriguing keeping up with all these conference tournaments that's happening. There's some buzzer beaters, there's some good games, there's some blowouts. Couple teams clinch either a regular season title or a share of a regular season title. A lot of good stuff happening this week. Once Josh gets in here, then we'll fully get into what we have on the docket for today's episode 180. Before that, though, we had a couple of things that happened on our YouTube page. Some videos that were starting to pop out 3 days in a row. My idea, we decided to do top 10 favorite March Madness moments. I was on the first of the docket to do this since it was my idea. I had a lot of fun recording this. I had a lot of fun going back in memory lane. And after listening, watching Josh's list and seeing your list, there's a lot of fucking moments I completely forgot about. Like, we honestly could have done a part 2 to this, or even we could have done a top 25 on this. Like, the process of going through all these moments, and again, it was favorite moments that we got to witness. We added one moment in there from one of our favorite teams where we got to witness it live or going back and watching a replay of it or something like that. It's not best moments, because if it was best moments, then this list would probably be entirely different, in my opinion, for me at least. But what was your process going through this? How fun was this to do?
It would just be all buzzer beaters if it was all like best moments. It'd just be buzzer beaters and national champion winning, and it would just all be the same stuff that you would expect. We did have, obviously, I think we all had Jenkins shot, I believe.
We've all had Jenkins shots. There's another one we had. Oh, me and you had Gordon Hayward's almost game winner. I know
did
that
Josh
for
not
sure.
have that?
No, I don't think he did.
That's
you
great.
both.
It's the biggest what if.
Yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned it in mine. Like, if that didn't happen, if that went in and it went into Butler's favor, they would have won their first national championship. And not Kentucky, Duke. Who knows if they won that 2015 title without that shot not happening?
That title in 2010, like, secured some of those because Quinn Cook was a freshman incoming in 2011, who obviously was a senior on that 2015 team. So a lot of historical things, like, again, not going to get deep into it, but a lot of historical things that could have went differently there. Were you surprised that I had Louisville on there? Was that just like, were you floored by that?
No, not necessarily. I didn't put them in there just because I only went with one moment, and I feel like the 2008 national championship shot from Mario Chalmers was a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah.
But man, like, when I seen that on your list, because I had you send me the list like I did with Josh, so I can get clips together because I was the one editing it. When I seen that, I was very happy. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I'm glad someone's finally, acknowledging that this happened.
I had been watching I've told you before, all the jokes aside, about the who does, who acknowledges what when. I mean, again, It didn't change. I've said this 1,000 times on this show specifically, but it didn't change what happened on the floor, right? As Josh joins us here. But really quick on the Louisville thing, I left him on there because it was the perfect time for me. I mentioned on it in that clip. I said, like, I'm in high school. This is the prime time of watching college basketball in my lifetime, right? I had seen many moments before that, but that was really the first, like the Butler shot, obviously, or what was the Butler shot, what could have been. But that was like the first real national title I remember because of that Kevin Ware moment and what, just how impactful that was. It felt weird having it at 10, but like I wanted to mess around with them. I thought the Purdue losing to FDU story was kind of interesting just because of, like I said, at the rehearsal dinner. Never told you all that story, but it was just nuts. One of those moments where you're like, never forget where you are when it happened. So, but I'm super excited we did those, and thank you for putting those together.
Hey, welcome, Josh. Welcome to the show, finally.
Welcome. I had some prior obligations. I lost out on $230 by one Christian Pulisic missed shot on goal. It happens. I appreciate Peyton and Trevor starting this thing, getting it set up. This is so nice to be able to have as I drop something, have people to be able to help me out finally, and it's amazing. Real quick, before we kind of get into what we're going to talk about today, I heard you guys talking about our top 10 moments, and this has been so cool. I know you guys have thanked Peyton. This was Peyton's idea for those videos. This is all Peyton's idea. He collaborated it. He got it edited. Really cool stuff. And the thing I like about the most, I think you guys have touched on a little bit, is we all have different moments, but we all have kind of the same collection of moments. Like the Chris Jenkins shot is so iconic. So it's kind of on all of our top 10s. And then there's different moments, and it kind of shows what means something to you. Like Trev's number one is because he was there. Like he's seen a Final Four buzzer beater. How could you top that if you're Trevor? Mine is one I watched as a kid when Kentucky beat Duke, as you'll see in the video if you haven't already watched it. So this is such a cool thing. This is the kind of content that you'll find popping up throughout the, leading up to Selection Sunday and beyond. Our tournament coverage has already started. So go check out the videos on the official ECB YouTube page and the TikTok. If you've not followed that, all the parts are on there or will be on there. Go give that a follow. But fellas, is that the only thing you guys got into so far, is just talking about the perfect? So let's start this off. You know how we do. We like to start a little bit of news at the top of the show here. I'm going to butcher this kid's name. But we had a big commitment yesterday in the world of college basketball looking ahead to next year. And the reason this is big is because Duke is absolutely loaded. Now, they were loaded prior. You obviously have the consensus number one Cooper Flagg coming in. They have other top 15, top 25 recruit 5-star kids. They got deeper for next year's team with the commitment of 7'2" big man, Kaman Malak. Again, I'm going to butcher that name. He's 7'2". He's from the NBA Africa Academy. Essentially, think of this. Next year's Duke team, they're going to be able to run out at least 3 7-footers that are all interchangeable, all can shoot, pass, and dribble. Duke, if they can get 1 or 2 guys back from this year's lineup to next year and not have to rely solely on this recruiting class, Duke's going to be such a problem next year. Fellas, Duke, the rich get richer. Duke gets another 7'2" kid that can shoot, pass, and dribble and block shots. The Dukies are loaded. John Shire is putting up a hell of a fight on the recruiting trail.
Go ahead, Trev.
The only thing I was going to say is just like people assume like following the guy, whether it's a player, obviously following Jordan in the 90s in Chicago, following LeBron, following a big coach, like following somebody of that stature is the hardest thing in sports. I think we've all kind of talked about that or talked around that. Look, just goes to show you how good John Shire really is. And at the end of the day, he needs his fair credit to continue to recruit. I understand Duke has the resources, but it plays a huge part in that. And I watched a video about this. Shout out to I think it was Strictly B-Ball for putting that video together. And the very first clip is John Shire talking to his family, right? Like just, hey, like this is the kind of thing. The recruiting trail doesn't change for these guys. Obviously with the money in NIL, we know what they can do from a pulling a player in standpoint from a Y. But look, at the end of the day, he brought the guy in, and Duke's fun. It's more fun in college basketball when Duke is good.
Yeah,
I agree.
I
would say that about all the Blue
Josh.
Bloods, Peyton, right? We've said that before. When all the Blue Bloods, when Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, UCLA, and that's why we keep repeatedly saying about Indiana and Louisville, they need to get good, because when they're all good, college basketball is great. Like, they're great. Yeah. And then you add the rise of mid-majors, right? Duke's loaded, though. I mean, for next year, when we preview them next year and the newly formed ACC with the expanded teams, they're going to be such a problem next year. Other piece of news, just real quick, I want to touch on. We don't spend a lot of time on it. We had one of our first coaching firings of this kind of wacky season. Lorenzo Romar, former Washington head coach for a long time out there. He was at Pepperdine. He got let go a couple days ago. So the wacky season of college basketball coaching carousel has already begun. You guys have any quick thoughts on Lorenzo Romar being gone or let go from Pepperdine? Pepperdine looking for a new head coach, any of that?
Yeah, I have a little tidbit on this. He only had one winning season at his time at Pepperdine. It was 2021. They went 15-12. Other than that, they had a lot of losing seasons. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that he got let go from Pepperdine. You can't go 7 years at a program, 7 years plus, and only have a one winning season. That's not a recipe for winning. So that's just my opinion on it.
I'll make it short and sweet as we hit the 10-minute mark. Look, he was a great coach. I think people don't kind of realize kind of the history of him a little bit. Almost a 58%, I think 58.7% winning percentage, so getting close to the 60%, which not a lot of coaches can say that that's something they've done. 7 NCAA tournament appearances in his 27-year career, but none at Pepperdine in either stint. He was actually the head coach from 96 to 99 before he went to Washington, and he had a really strong run there in Washington in the mid to early 2000s.
Brought in Isaiah Thomas.
Brandon Roy, I think, if Brandon Roy went there. Yeah,
Terrence Ross. He had Terrence Jones, a whole recruiting deal back then. I mean, he had really good teams and just kind of fell off. It does make you wonder if he's at the end of his cycle now. But interesting news, the coaching carousel, something throughout the whole offseason. We'll keep you guys abreast about.
The last thing I was going to say is just like, as part of what I was bringing up is that just shows you how hard a California team is if you're not UCLA or USC, right? And I'm obviously forgetting maybe a few in there. But the point is he is an incredible coach, especially from what we saw at Washington, and it just shows you how hard the WCC really is. Obviously with Gonzaga and St. Mary's at the top, but also just a California school. You're competing with the same schools, 17 to 20 of them, for some of the same guys in one of the best states in basketball.
Completely agree. Shout out to all of our live listeners. I'm sure the guys already mentioned, like normal, we are live on the Facebook, the YouTube, Twitter, and it looks like the House of College Hoops Twitter as well. So shout out. We've got pretty much a good crowd in here. So if you're following along live, join the comments, leave a comment on the Twitter, YouTube, whatever. We'll play along with you. If you have questions, we'll read them out loud. We have an interactive show here at ECB. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for tuning in live. But let's get down to some of the nitty-gritty stuff. We talked about this, Peyton and I did on Sunday's episode, about conference tournaments officially starting this week. Not all of them, but half of them, or at least a good majority of them starting. And let's go to the ASun. ASun kicked things off in the month of March with the wild, wacky stuff that we love come March time. You look at the ASun bracket, the 10 seed Jacksonville played the opening game of conference tournaments on Monday night against Kennesaw State. They put up 92 on Kennesaw State to move to the next round. Queens beat Florida Gulf Coast. Great win for Queens. Those two moved on. The games I want to talk about, I'm sure we all want to talk about, happened on Tuesday night when the higher seeds got involved in this tournament. Let's start with the 1 seed in this conference. Eastern Kentucky wins the outright regular season championship in the Atlantic Sun Conference, playing the 10 seed Jacksonville, who had just, as I mentioned, won a game the night before. And Jacksonville continues their hot streak, takes down the 1 seed in the conference tournament, Eastern Kentucky, the first conference tournament to officially kick things off in March. And we have upsets galore. Fellas, your immediate reaction, can Jacksonville as a 10 seed make a magical run and punch their bid? Because they're sure in hell halfway there right now.
Can they? Absolutely, because it's fucking March. They can absolutely. They've already knocked down the 1 seed. They've got a clear path to the finals if they can get it done. Now, they've got 2 players in this game that had incredible performances. Bryce Workman, 25 and 12 with 2 assists. And then you had Robert McRae, the 5th, 24 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He played 37 minutes. Workman played 34. When you have 2 guys on your roster that can go out there and get you, hell, 15 plus, let alone 20 plus on any given night, especially in a conference tournament, like an environment like this. Incredible display, incredible performances out of both of those guys. And wow, what an upset. What a wild way to start off conference tournament time. What a wacky conference, man.
Trev, Eastern Kentucky has an incredible year, goes 12-4 in the league. They shoot 36% from 3, one of the nation's best 3-point shooting teams. It shows how different and how small the margin of error is, because in this game, the game that eliminated them and pretty much ended their season, they go 3 of 16 from the 3-point line and they're bounced out of the tournament. That's how small the margin of error is, especially in these 1-bid leagues.
Yeah, to answer your original question, can Jacksonville do it? Like Peyton said, I agree with the probably. But what I will say is I think this is Stetson's to lose still. A lot of folks really did. I know that the Jerome that we'll get to in a little bit when we pick some of the conferences in a few. But I know in the Jerome, like the national public picked Lipscomb, for crying out loud, right? Like, so this is obviously a tournament where anybody really could win it. Obviously, you know, my heart goes out to, you know, Coach Grant Leonard over at Queens for actually getting in the tournament as the 8th seed and then actually winning that first round game and putting up a fight against Stetson. Stetson, I don't think people realize, like, regardless of how dominant Eastern Kentucky was this year, Stetson was only ranked one spot behind them in KenPom when the season finished. So this is Stetson's tournament to lose. They will be the home team against Jacksonville, and they will obviously, because it's a home site tournament, they'll be the home team against either Austin Peay or North Alabama as the tournament concludes here, I believe 2 p.m. tomorrow. So, or Sunday, 2 p.m. on Sunday.
And that wasn't it. The 1 seed falls. The 2 seed was in a struggle. As you mentioned, Stetson did survive and advance against Queens, who gave them all they wanted. But the night wasn't over on Tuesday night, because not only did Eastern Kentucky lose, but the 3 seed, and this is the game everybody wants to talk about. Our friends down in Lipscomb, Coach Lenny Acuff, former guest of this show, they hosted the quarterfinal action between North Alabama, the 3 versus the 6. And what ended up being an incredible college basketball game. North Alabama leads the majority of this game. Second half late, Lipscomb rallies. Lipscomb gets the lead. North Alabama takes it back. Lipscomb ties it. North Alabama takes the lead. Till very there at the end. This is the stuff everybody wants to talk about. I'm sure they've seen on the highlights. North Alabama has a lead by 3. They foul KJ Johnson. He goes to the foul line with like 9 seconds left. Front end of the 1-and-1, he misses. Lipscomb sprints down the floor, hits a trail 3 to tie the game. North Alabama sprints back down the floor. The aforementioned KJ Johnson, who, by the way, spent the last 3 years at Lipscomb before moving to North Alabama this year, hits a runner with a contested, I mean, you can call it lucky, because I don't know if it was a tough shot, we'll put it that way. And he buries it to knock his former club and the host team out of the ASun tournament. The 3 seed goes down. This was an incredible game. All 3 of us in our group chat were texting back and forth during the end of this. Trev, I'll let you take this one first. What an incredible college basketball game. And if you're Lipscomb, that's a heartbreaker.
Yeah, look, you got to go out for you got to pour one out for him there. I guess my thought is, it's just, it goes to show you how important defense really is when Lipscomb, not to drag them through the mud defensively, but not a great defensive team. They were 5th in the country. Shout out to Phil for this stat, pulling this one for us. They're 5th in the country in points per possession this year. I mean, that's incredible. Like we've talked about it with Coach, the style of offense that they play, right? They can beat anybody with that style of offense. And, just shows you sometimes, even with some of these incredible scores, like Austin Peay, we didn't even mention the 4 seed still in this tournament. They beat North Florida 101-98 in overtime, right? So incredible offense, incredible games all throughout. Lipscomb obviously was just on the wrong end of it, and they hit a 3 that put them in a position to potentially win that game anyway, right? Obviously, it would have been a tie going to overtime. So, but shout out to Johnson for that incredible shot. I mean, he's on the thumbnail for a reason. If you're watching this on YouTube, he deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. Watching this game, I was watching the Kansas game, and I was watching this on my phone, and I was like, holy shit, what a shot. I think it's luck, because, dude, he can barely see the fucking rim when he shot that up. He could not see anything up. I'm not saying it wasn't a great shot, because it was.
March magic.
That was 100% luck. What a shot. Will Pruitt hits a shot before that to make it tied up, and then he goes down and does that. Onions.
I didn't notice it, by the way. I didn't notice it. You might, maybe this is what you're about to say, but Scott Van Pelt, when they went to put it on, it was the biggest thing of the day, right, for a tournament for March. Yeah. And Scott Van Pelt goes, how'd they call this a 2? Like, he's freaking out on the DC broadcast at like midnight. And you look again, he's like 3 full steps behind the 3-point line when he initially leaves the ground. And I'm like, they called it a 2, and I didn't even really notice it, because I was like, oh, yeah, he just like runner. Maybe he jumped forward, touched the ground, whatever. And Scott Van Pelt pointed it out, and I'm like, oh, my God, it was a 3, but whatever. Yeah.
How about cruel irony, too, if you're Lipscomb and Coach Lenny Acuff? This is a kid you had in your program for 3 years, and then he's the one that ends up knocking you out and sending you home and ending your season. I mean, cruel fate. I mean, beautiful irony if you're KJ Johnson, I suppose. And I posed this question to you guys, and I posed it on the Facebook group. If this is what March is going to be like, we are in store for one wild-ass March run, because it didn't take but 1 day, 2 days, whatever, max, for the March Madness to begin already. Our semifinals, actually, as we sit here and record on March 7th, Thursday, the semifinals will be playing tonight between Jacksonville and Stetson in one matchup, North Alabama, Austin Peay in the other. If you go chalk, it's going to be Stetson or Austin Peay. But as we've seen in this conference tournament already, expect the unexpected. What a wild start to conference tournament and champ week. I mean, shout out ASun for giving us some exciting basketball and North Alabama for creating March moments already. Just wild scenes on Tuesday night. Let's turn our attention back to the big boys, though, because we did have some heavy hitters. Obviously, this is the last week of regular season for the Power 6 conferences and most of the other conferences that haven't started tournaments yet. Purdue goes on the road. We already talked about it on Sunday. They at least clinched a share of their 26 Big Ten regular season championship. They went on Tuesday night on the road to Champaign, Illinois to play second place Illinois. A win would give them an outright title. An Illinois win would have kept them alive for at least a share going into the final game this weekend. Fellas, Purdue, they found themselves down early, but Purdue does what Purdue does. They played behind Zach Edey, who had 28. He only had 8 rebounds, but he scored like normal. And then the guy who's been their MVP in a way, if you take Edey away from this team, Braden Smith, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and then the dagger that killed off Illinois late in the shot clock at the end of the game. Purdue, it's just, even on their off nights when they're not playing well and they find themselves down 10 to Illinois at one point, on the road, you have to kill this team. This team is built for a rebound from last year's embarrassment to actually make a Final Four for the first time in program history since 1980. Talk to me about this game, boys.
I've got a couple of thoughts on this game. Some things I wanted to mention. Zach Edey obviously had his normal game. He didn't have that big of a rebounding game, but he still had 28 points, had his normal type of game that he normally has. That's not the one I want to talk about. They won this game because of their guard play. Braden Smith had 13 points. Fletcher Lawyer had 16 points. That's point number one. That's the difference maker. If people want to talk all they want about what happened last year, last year's the past. Forget what that happened last year. We're in the present now. The difference between last year and this year is 2 reasons. One, the guards are better this year. That's number one. 2, last year.
Yeah.
2, last year. Purdue shot 32% from 3. This year, they're shooting 40% from 3. They're a top 3 3-point shooting team in the country. And this game, they shot 56% from 3, 9 of 16. Those are the 2 biggest difference makers why I think this year's Purdue team is better than last year's Purdue team. And that's why you need to keep an eye on them in the tournament. Great win. That's all I wanted to say.
We are aligned brain wavelength-wise. The word I would use to summarize that, because I basically had the exact same thing written down, but I'll kind of clarify a few things that I think are important. Maturity. It's a completely more mature team. And what I mean by that is, shout out to Roy Hibbert, who I think has been pretty good on some of the CBS broadcasts.
Big Roy.
Look, you can tell he's the player there, and there's a bunch of John Rothsteins and Gary Parishes around him, right? Like, it's definitely a sore thumb kind of thing, but I think he's incredible so far. And he made a point that I noticed, but I didn't really think much of. On that shot that basically put Purdue or Illinois to sleep when Braden Smith did that, last year they would have dumped that ball to Edey. They would have tried to throw that pass over the top, which, by the way, they probably should. Like, let's be real with each other for a second. 7'3", 2-time National College Player of the Year, obviously, probably a good thing. But in the tournament, they're going to deny that ball. There's going to be teams with guys with that height. They're going to deny that ball constantly. So I think this team matured in 2 ways because they made that pass in a tight game on a road environment. Coach Painter talked about how hard that environment really is, for those that don't realize it. And then maturity from the guards, right? I think that just went hand in hand with what Peyton said. Last year, like, if you're like me and you were a Purdue hater or doubter is a better word. Let me not be wrong. Doubter, even with the record that they have and the Big Ten outright title. The point I'm making is that was always going to be my question. I said it on this show months ago, was even if the guards are more experienced and they've learned from the tournament experience last year, regardless if it wasn't a deep run, they are better this year. That is without a question. The inconsistencies are still there, right? If they follow this up, I think they play, I have to look, they play Wisconsin, I think, to end the year. Yes, they played Wisconsin on Sunday, right? If they go into go into that game against Wisconsin at home and Braden Smith has another performance like that, just continue to stack on top of this into the Big Ten tournament. I'm going to be really, really impressed. It's going to be really hard for me not to put Purdue in the Final Four.
I agree with both of you, and that's why Purdue's so dangerous, is because those guards are a year older. Like the mistakes that we saw last year with Braden Smith, where if you had an athletic, kind of stronger guard get up in him, he would turn the ball over. He had turnover problems. That's not really the issue as bad this year. And Trev, I agree 100% wholeheartedly that last year and years past, late in the game, if they needed a bucket, they're forcing that ball into Edey. But they're going to run into a team in the tournament that's going to throw some zone at them. they're going to run into a team that if it comes late in the game, that are going to front Edie and have backside help. So Braden Smith has to get used to taking that big shot. I want to ask you guys this in regards to Purdue. Obviously, they've clinched the Big Ten regular season championship with a game to go. They've got the number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Their number 1 seed is set in stone. I don't think they could lose to Wisconsin on Sunday, and they could lose in the first round or in the first game of the Big Ten tournament, and they're a 1 seed. The question now becomes is kind of the age-old question of the importance of the conference tournament. To all of us, because we're competitors, we cover the sport, we love basketball, we want to go win that. And I'm sure Purdue fans obviously want to go win another Big Ten title. But what would behoove Purdue more? Would it behoove them to, I'm not saying not try to win it, but sometimes a loss, maybe to get the extra couple days rest, isn't the worst thing if you guys followed my drift. So how hard would you push to win this Big Ten tournament title, knowing everything in front of you secure? You just need to be ready and healthy for the NCAA tournament.
I think it's a simple answer. I'm not saying it's a bad question, but I do think it's a simple answer, and you never want to put any kind of negative mental headspace in your guys. Like, it's just, I get what you're saying, but I don't think it would be smart to do that because they're already good enough anyway. They're going to win games. Like they may lose to Northwestern, whoever, right? Like they may have an opportunity like that. They've already lost a couple of games in Big Ten play this year at Nebraska as well. We know that they're beatable. That's not the point. It's just, I don't think you should never, ever allow an opportunity for, look, I don't think Painter's the greatest coach in the world, right? I don't think you should ever lay out the opportunity for your guys to have, whether it's rest or not related. I don't think you should ever allow your guys to have an opportunity for there to be some negativity when you have this kind of run going.
I don't disagree with that, but I will give you 2 examples that popped to mind where it absolutely helped the teams. 2012, Kentucky lost in the final to Vanderbilt. They go on to win a national championship, ran through everybody. UConn lost in the Big East championship last year to Marquette. They ran through everybody in the tournament. So it depends on how tight your team is and how good your team is. Like, I'm not saying, again, go out there and lose on purpose and just blow the game. But if you were upset along the way, it might not be the worst thing to have the extra. Because, again, I think it was always a teaching moment. Let's say they did get upset somewhere along the Big Ten tournament route, whether in the final, semifinal, or not. It could be one last reminder that Coach Painter can use his team. If you do not play to our standard, when we get to this NCAA tournament next week, you will get beat and your season's over a la last year. I think it could be a teaching moment. Maybe not the worst thing if they did lose, but also you also want to win. Peyton, did you have a thought on that?
I can understand there's definitely some validity to your point. I can go back to the 2013 national championship squad for Louisville. We lost a 5-4 overtime game to Notre Dame, and that was ended up being our last loss of the season. And after that, we were motivated and basically winning through the Big East till we got to Syracuse in the final, and then obviously won the national championship. So I think there's some validity to your point, but if you're losing the championship game of the final, I don't think it's that big of a thing, in my opinion. And also, I do think, and this is just my opinion, just the way I've watched Purdue this year, Trevor mentioned a good point about maturity with the guards. I think that's definitely a good point, but I also think there's a trust level. They trust their guards a lot more than they did last year. And a lot of it has to do with, like I mentioned, the three-point percentage. When you have a guy like Zach Edey down low in the paint, he has to be able to kick it out to someone. He has to trust you to be able to hit shots. Last year it didn't happen. This year it's happened. So it's a maturity level, but it's also a trust level. And I think unless they get Illinois in the final, I think they run through the Big Ten tournament this year.
Yeah, I didn't really have, like I said, I don't have a problem with the question. I think I understood it or heard it as like implying them taking their foot off the gas, which I think they absolutely should. That's what I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure. I also, honestly, my biggest problem with your point was I cannot believe Vanderbilt. I forgot that happened, that Vanderbilt won a meaningful game in the SEC.
They had a good team.
I know. I'm looking at it now going, oh, I guess that did happen. And then
they had a good team, man.
I pulled it up.
Festus Ezeli played on that team. They had a good team. Last point before we move on to the next game that I want to talk about. Illinois, real quick. Obviously, this doesn't do any damage to them. They're pretty much secure, I think, as the 2 seed, as long as they don't lose this weekend. Your guys' thoughts as we march closer and we're 10 days away from Selection Sunday. What do you think Illinois needs to do? Because they obviously have the talent to make a Final Four. What do you see from Illinois? Any lessons we've learned in the last game or two from them? Just real quick on Illinois.
I'll be short and sweet. Out of the 4 of us, maybe we'll take Phil out of it because he hasn't been on a podcast this year, unfortunately. And he's obviously an Illinois fan. But I was probably the highest on Illinois out of all of us. I mean, I was talking like Elite 8 Final Four potential before the Terrence Shannon Jr. stuff happened. And Do I still think that? Not necessarily. But if they score and beat anybody by scoring, 100 points or 90 points, I think they haven't lost a game when they've scored above, 90 or something like that. I don't remember the exact stat yet because that game against Purdue was in the 70s. If they can score and have an on night, they're going to beat anybody in the tournament. The problem is I just don't know if there's enough defensive consistency where originally earlier in the year that felt like it was getting really good. And I have some doubts now. I still think Sweet 16 is their floor.
Yeah, I agree. Everything Trev said is exactly my point I was about to make. The defense is just lackluster. The offense can beat anybody in the country. I put them in the same category as Kentucky and Alabama.
There's a whole bunch of
yeah.
There's a whole bunch like that. Here's my thing on Illinois real quick before we move on. They have one of the best 1-2 punches offensively in college basketball with Marcus Domask and TJ Shannon. Those aren't the issues because late in the game, those two will win you tournament games. It's how Coleman Hawkins plays as we get to the tournament. If Coleman Hawkins is good, Illinois can make a run to the Final Four. If he is bad for a game or two, they're done. So that's my opinion. Let's move on. We talked a little bit. You just mentioned Alabama, Peyton. Tuesday night, Florida, Alabama. Bama's been on a slide. They had coming into this game, they had lost 2 of 3. They had given up a bunch of points in both of those, and it continued on Tuesday night in Gainesville. I love this Florida team. I absolutely love this Florida team because they are like Kentucky, like Alabama, like Illinois, and a lot of other teams. They can score, put numbers on you in a hurry. They shoot the ball well, and they're one of the top 5 best offensive rebounding teams of college basketball. I'm convinced that no matter where they're at in the tournament, they are going to be a problem for whoever they play. They railroaded Alabama. The game was close for a little while, but once they kind of got their foothold in this game, they blew Alabama out. They win 105-87. Walter Clayton, 22 points. Will Richard, 23. Tyrese Samuel's been phenomenal this year, 19. Zion Pullen on senior night for him had 19 points. I love this Florida team. I think they're sneaky good enough to win the SEC tournament next weekend. And I think that you talk about sleepers that can make a Final Four because how many points they can score with that offense, the way the offensive rebound, again, on them, it comes down to defensive stops. I think they could be a sleeper to make a Final Four. I love this Florida team. Your guys' thoughts on Florida just kicking the crap out of Alabama on Tuesday night?
Hey, Peyton, I'm going to just say one thing. It has nothing to do with the game because I told you guys when I wanted to start contributing to this and that you had me, I would own up when I'm wrong. And I texted you guys. I couldn't find the text quick enough. I texted you guys in late November when I was at the SEC ACC Challenge in Winston-Salem. And Winston-Salem and Wake Forest at the time was a very weak team coming out of Charleston, or going into Charleston, I believe. And Florida did not look good. They look completely disheveled, and I was like, I'm not in on this Florida team. I knew it was early. I was just very straight up and honest, and obviously y'all know how I feel about Wake Forest. So this is the moment I own up to that mistake and say, I agree with you. I think that this team can make a ridiculous run, and I kind of feel similarly about them like I did with Illinois earlier in the year about when things start to click defensively. We'll see about the SEC part of it, but I just, once it comes to March Madness, I don't know if there's a better, guard combination than Riley Kugel and Zion Pullen. I just think those two guys are incredible. So nothing about the game. I'll leave that for Peyton, but an incredible team that I absolutely 100% should not have said a word about in November in that kind of statement.
Well, I appreciate you owning up to the fact that you made a mistake, but here's the thing. I don't even remember you saying that, therefore I won't let you slide. But that was back in November. Who gives a shit? We've all said some shit. I said Kansas was going to win the Big 12. Guess what? They're like 6 right now. So, we've all made mistakes. Who really cares? I appreciate you opening up for that. At least you do, and a lot of people out there doesn't.
That is true.
Florida, they put up 105, dude. We talk about so much how Alabama can score up 100 points and shit like that. How they done it 5-6 times, but this is 2 games and in a week they gave up over 100 points. What the fuck are we doing? Watching this Alabama squad just pisses me off because offensively they're good, but anybody said they're the best offense of the country don't know basketball, and that's just a fact because they're not the best offense in the country. That belongs to Kentucky. Why? Kentucky has more lethal guards. They have more depth. The front court, it's a little lackluster, but Aaron Bradshaw's starting to play well. DJ Wagner's starting to hit shots. I know I'm going off for a little rant here, but I can't help it. And then you have the other pieces, Big Z doing what he's doing. That's the best offense of the country. Bama, no. The defense is dog shit. They don't even want to play defense. It's an honestly embarrassing. It's a complete flip side of what Virginia does.
Well, let's look to go to that point, Peyton. Alabama's lost 3 of their last 4 in the last couple weeks. In those losses, they've given up 117, 81 to Tennessee, and then 105 to Florida. You go back to the other losses, 99 to Auburn, 91 to Tennessee, 87 to Arizona, 85 to Creighton, 92 to Purdue, 85 to Clemson, and 92 to a struggling Ohio State team at the beginning of the year. It is very much defense optional. They're number 1 in KenPom in offense. I agree with what you said, though. And then they're 109 in defense. All this talk about other teams struggling defense, Alabama is in a much worse shape than any other team that we could talk about. They have the offense to make a Final Four and the defense that'll get them beat in the first round. How do we fix Alabama here besides saying playing defense? Mark Sears is going for a career nights every night. They get Aaron Estrada's up and down. Rylan Griffin's kind of up and down. He's a really good number 2 option. I think it's got to be guys in the front court to help them out. Grant Nelson, Jaron Stevenson. Some of these guys, Sam Walters, can step out and shoot. They need more than Mark Sears to carry them, or Alabama could be in real trouble, not only in the SEC tournament next week, but come NCAA time. Just real quick, guys, how do we fix Alabama?
I don't know if Nate Oates knows how to do it either. This is not me putting him on, the fire and brimstone block.
He said as much in post-game press conference and stuff. He basically, I'm paraphrasing, he basically said, we can't guard nobody. That's basically what he says.
He's an incredible speaker. I'm not going to listen to anything he says about that until he fixes it, because he's an incredible speaker. We know he can recruit. Like, he's an incredible talker, right? So until he figures it out, you said, like, barring or, other than defense, I don't really have an answer for you. It's defense.
I don't either.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Well, I was trying to be edgy here and see if we can diagnose some other problem.
What do you want? It's the defense.
It's the defense.
I'm not the defense doctor either, so I'm the wrong guy.
Well, let's move on to a team that knows how to play defense. They know who they are better than any other team in the college basketball. I've said this since the beginning of the year, and that's Connecticut. We talked about it, Peyton, on Sunday's episode. They had clinched, after blowing out Seton Hall, they had clinched their first regular season Big East crown since 2006 or whenever it was. They have the title wrapped up. They went in Wednesday night to Marquette to play a hobbling and reeling Marquette team who got beat up by Creighton at the weekend. No Tyler Kolek. He's out for the regular season. They're hoping obviously he'll be back for tournament time, but no Tyler Kolek, no party for Marquette. This ain't the same Marquette team, especially obviously they lost Sean Jones at the beginning of the year, and Connecticut's too damn good. They got Alex Caravan, who, to be frank, had been struggling the last month or so to find form. They got him rolling in this game. He had 23 points on 5 of 9 3-point shooting. Connecticut wins 74-67. I mean, they are the most complete team in college basketball from top to bottom. They know who they are. This is my opinion. And getting Alex Caravan right on the offensive end is the single most important thing, in my opinion, that Coach Hurley can do between now and the start of the NCAA tournament. Because if Caravan's firing, how in the hell are you going to beat Connecticut? They have no weaknesses. Cam Spencer does what he does on a nightly basis. They have the big men in the middle. They have great guards. Connecticut's that good, and I've said it for months, and I'll stick behind this. I think they're going back-to-back. What do you guys think about this game, Connecticut? And what about at Marquette? No Tyler Kolek. They're a completely different ball club.
I think Dane Hurley needs to get some recognition for National Coach of the Year, because coming into this year, they won the national championship, so he has the pressure coming into the season, and then they lose 5 of their top 8 scorers. They lose a lot of production from last year's team, had to come in and basically do it all over again, and never felt like they lost to be at all. From the get-go, they were whooping teams' ass. And you mentioned it, they know their role. There's not many teams in the country that knows their role more than UConn does, and that's very important. But another important aspect to UConn's team is just the confidence level. Who's a more confident team in the country right now than Connecticut heading into the tournament? They've got the momentum, they got the confidence, they got the swagger, they know what they need to do, and they're going to get it done. I legitimately think they're going to go back-to-back. The question is not only for me, this is just my opinion, it's not if they go back-to-back, it's how are they going to do it when they go back-to-back. Are they just going to blow by everybody like they did last year? It's a question that will have to be answered in March, but I do think this team is the best team in the country.
I would be lying if I could tell you. I'm sitting here trying to figure out the entire time you both were talking, like, what is their weakness? And
Nothing,
I honestly
really.
couldn't come up with one.
Yeah.
And it sounds nuts, but like I actually kind of disagree with the Caravan point a little bit, not to force anything here, but like Cam Spencer is the reason this team wins multiple tournament games. Like I know that Caravan had 23 in that one. He was the Kimpom MVP, but Cam Spencer, he was the one talking to the other bench. He got the technical. Don't know if that was
I
probably
love that he talks shit, by the way. I love that.
I love it. It's great.
I love
He
that.
5 of 7 from 3, so he shot better efficiency than Caravan. He had 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals in that game. If Cam Spencer's on, that's who's going to make their tournament run easier, right? Obviously, blowing out teams if both those guys are shooting, you're not beating UConn. It just is what it is. But look, I saw them last year put San Diego State in a chokehold, albeit even though I was in the 100s, I had binoculars, but. It's still like even from 3,000 feet away, you can see they just absolutely they just can turn it on. Tristan Newton plays a huge part in that, being the person that slowed that game down. It got kind of weird there in the second half. San Diego State tried, and like that was the moment I'm like, are they going to flip this? Is this a team that can just flip a switch? We knew last year they were dominant in the run, but when you get into a championship tight situation that they're obviously familiar with, can they just flip it? And with the new personnel, I was afraid that might not be the case, but Tristan Newton's still there, and he's arguably the most important piece. Obviously, we talked about a lot of great players.
Do you know what's scary? In the last month, dating back to February 6th, was the last time until Wednesday. Marquette lost by 7 points. That's the last time since dating back to, February 6th, when they played Butler at home, where they beat them by 9. Those games in between, Georgetown, they beat by 25. They beat DePaul 101-65. They beat Marquette 81-53. They lost to Creighton, but then they followed up beating Villanova by 24. They beat Seton Hall by 30. They are getting into last season tournament form. And if you, again, remember the tournament, they ran through everybody. Nobody stood a chance. I'm telling you, it's going to take a special night and a Connecticut off night to stop them from going back to back. This is such a scary team. And Peyton, I'm with you. Coach Hurley should be at the top of one of the top 2 or 3 names for Coach of the Year, because it's not easy to follow up a national title, losing a bunch of your key guys, and then followed up going 27-3 at the current moment. I mean, come on. Like, they're just beating up on teams and taking their lunch money. Real quick on Marquette, though. No Tyler Kolek, no party for Marquette. Let's say Kolek comes back for NCAA tournament time, but is only like 70%. What's the likelihood Marquette doesn't make it out of the first weekend?
I'm trying not to spend forever on this because I could probably change my answer 4 times. 70% of Kolek. I'll take 70% of Kolek against any team in the country. Like, I just will. Right? He played on that bum ankle earlier in the year. I think it was like they had a stretch in non-con play. They had some tough games, and they won those games with him playing whatever it was with that ankle. So, I'll take 7% of Kolek. I think they still make the Sweet 16 even with 40% Kolek.
I'm going to disagree with that point, because if we go back to last year, Kolek came into the tournament with an injured hand, and they ended up getting beat in the second week.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up getting beat in the second round by Michigan State. So if he's not fully healthy, I think they can definitely, depending on matchups, obviously, that's the main important part of the tournament, depending on matchups, I definitely think they can get beat in the first weekend.
Hypothetically, they play Michigan State. Same thing. Say it's the same exact scenario, and they have 70% of Kolek. Do they still win that game? They beat Michigan State, right? I mean, it's matchup dependent. I think they beat Michigan State.
I would think so, but it's also Tom Izzo in March. I mean,
and he still got decent guards.
This team was dead. Look, Michigan State was dead in the water in December. I mean, we all thought they were.
Yeah.
We all thought they were a corpse. So the fact that this is even a scenario, the fact that this is even a question, is crazy. By the way, anyway, that's it.
And I think just to put a bow on that, the point being, if Tyler Kolek's not 100%, Marquette is very gettable in the early rounds, especially. So it's something we're at the monitor and keep an eye on. Let's move on real quick. Start hitting some of these quicker. Tennessee wrapped up the SEC regular season championship, their first regular season title outright in like 10 years. They went on the road last night playing South Carolina, who had beat them earlier in the year, about a month or so ago in Knoxville. They handled South Carolina. Carolina came back late, made it a game, but they just matched South Carolina's physicality, forced them into being a jump shooting team. South Carolina, to their credit, did hit 8, but tucked 29. It's not really their MO. I mean, Zakai Ziegler, he had 13, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. Dalton Connect for 26. Tennessee is a 1 seed, in my opinion. I will take them as a 1 seed over Arizona at the moment. I think they're the better team. They are on a 7-game win streak. They're now the SEC regular season champs. And we've talked about this. They've got everything that Rick Barnes has not had before at Tennessee. They can make a Final Four. They're that good. And if Dalton Connect gets you 26, I mean, as long as everybody else helps out like they did last night, it's a wrap for whoever they're playing. I mean, Tennessee, SEC champs. What are we thinking?
I think Tennessee can go to the Final Four. I think they're that good. They've got Dalton Connect, who can take it to the rim. He can finish. He can shoot. He can shoot over anybody, being at 6'6". They got great defense. They're very physical with teams. Always going to bring the physicality in any game they play in. As far as trust levels for them, UConn's number 1 on my list. I think Tennessee might be number 2 on my list as far as trust in them. So I think Tennessee can go to the Final Four.
It's crazy. I agree with him, Trevor, because I've always had a rule, and I'm sorry to Tennessee people watching this, but because year after year in the tournament, you have this elite defense, but your offense lets you down. So I always bet against them at a certain point. It's kind of flipped. I trust them this year. They have everything you need to win and actually win big. Trev, your thoughts?
I think they need that 1 seed bad. Arizona, North Carolina is who they're competing against. I don't disagree with anything. I think they're a Final Four team. Look, at the end of the day, I think Dalton Connect needs to have more National Player of the Year recognition.
I do too.
I really think he's had a better February than Zach Edey has. And honestly, I know it's not a February award, but it's a recency thinking about what the national, this guy's played really great lately. He's fresh in our minds. If I had a vote, I think I would vote for him right now.
I don't disagree with that, and I actually like that you said that. I think a lot of people figured this was wrapped up back in like January, but I don't think they're paying too much attention. Dalton Connect absolutely should. To me and you and all of us, I think we agree. He's put a lot of pressure on Edey for that award. I think it's closer than maybe people think. But real quick, last thing too, I seen a tweet that went viral last night. I tweeted from our official I think it was from the ECV page. To summarize it, basically somebody said, look at Dalton Connect crying or pointing at his ring finger because he won an SEC regular season championship. Why is he so excited that him and Tennessee should have loftier goals looking ahead? I'm sorry. When did it become uncool to celebrate winning a title, especially a kid who spent his career at Northern Colorado, and now he comes to a power program in a power conference and wins an SEC regular season championship in a tough-ass conference, and he shouldn't be excited? Get out of here with that. I hate when people do that and try to discredit people. Let the kids celebrate.
Yeah. If I was you, I wouldn't have even given this guy the time of day.
I wouldn't either.
I applaud you for at least bringing it up.
Just let them celebrate. Get over it. Real quick, North Carolina, they beat Notre Dame. They have now won 5 in a row since the loss to Syracuse back on February 13th. Last night's win guaranteed at least a share of the ACC title. Obviously, it'll be dependent on what happens on Saturday in the game that we're going to preview here in just a minute. But thoughts on North Carolina? Hubert Davis, we gave him a lot of crap last year. They underperformed a lot, getting rid of a player, but bringing a good recruiting class. He's bounced back. Congratulations. Hubert Davis has done a hell of a job this year.
Absolutely. The experience, having RJ Davis back, one of the best point guard or one of the best guards in the country, and definitely probably the ACC player of the year, in my opinion. Definitely in the running for that. You got him in there, and then you got Armando Burkhead, guy you can trust down low, is going to get the rebounds and going to pound them inside and bring the physicality to this game. They've got a 1-2 punch right there, and you got Cormac Ryan to be able to shut you out, hit some shots. Still got Elliot Kendo, who's very, very talented. I think they've got enough pieces to maybe make a run to like the Final Four, but I do think they're a second weekend team, and anything above that, it would be, obviously, I mentioned it. I'm going to keep on mentioning it. It's always going to be matchup dependent. So they can win on any given night, but they also lose on any given night. But hats off to Hubert Davis. He's done a great job.
I'll just share a statistic that I think is nuts about North Carolina in terms of the ACC regular season. This is per shout out to Steve Kirshner who's been the SID at North Carolina for a really long time. Brendan Marks tweeted this. He covers Duke and North Carolina for The Athletic. Since the last time UNC and Duke split the ACC regular season title in 2001, those teams have played the season finale with a potential UNC title outright or shared on the line 8 times. How many times do you think UNC won that?
Probably like 6 of them.
All 8 times, including 3
that's
times
an
at Cameron
incredible
Indoor.
stat.
So shout out to Steve Kirshner's the best SID in the business. Huge shout out to him. Brendan Marks obviously with the tweet there.
So Duke's over when they have at least a share of the conference in between that last game.
Correct.
In those, oh my God, that's an insane
UNC won
stat.
all 8, including 3 at Cameron, and then in 2005, UNC finished 1 game ahead of Wake Forest. 2007 and 2019 tied with Virginia. 2018, 11, 12. 2008, 11 and 12 finished 1 game ahead of Duke. 2009 finished 2 games ahead of Duke, and 2016 finished 1 game ahead of Virginia. So just say that North Carolina's had a stranglehold on this conference since 2001. Probably a fair point.
Yeah,
Steve Kirshner.
That's an incredible stat. You mentioned Wake Forest. We're not going to spend a lot of time. I just want to hear your thoughts. A week and a half ago after the win against Duke, I proclaimed that they were a lock for a tournament. Peyton said not so fast. All they've done since then is lose 3 in a row. Has Wake Forest shot themselves in the foot, Trev?
Someone tried to tell me the other day, I'm not going to give him the time of day, but someone tried to tell me that Wake Forest would beat every team in the Mountain West except for San Diego State. And I go, they can't even beat anybody on the road. I said, you're insane. And so, look, I love Steve Forbes, love that guy to death, but they can't get out of their own way. I mean, that crowd was shell shocked when Georgia Tech won that game. I understand
the game winner.
It was 11 o'clock at night, but like the video, somebody I knew that was there, video. That crowd, the entire place was holding its breath on the way out. Like, it just was so, this team can't get out of its own way. And Peyton made a great point, not so fast, because Wake Forest, I agree with you, that win was humongous. They probably should be in, but this is why we're not bracketologists. So, or I'm not at least.
Yeah, they're pulling Clemson. Their Wake Forest is pulling a Clemson at the end of the year. Let's move on. We've got some big games for the weekend here in the final week of the regular season. Couple conference tournaments. Now that Trev's on, I do want to just talk about real quick. Let's start. We have a 3-headed monster of massive games in the regular season the right way on. All on Saturday. Let's talk about them. Let's go back to the Big 12. Peyton, Kansas coming off of losing 2 of their last 3. They did win at home the other night on Tuesday night and senior night against Kansas State. Got a much-needed win. Kevin McCullough is back, probably not fully healthy, but he's playing well, and that's so important to Kansas. But, man, they are facing a tall task on the road Saturday if Houston wins, they clinch the conference. If they lose, there's a chance they could maybe share it with Iowa State. So they're playing for a lot, and they're also playing for, obviously, pride and all that. Kansas goes on the road to Houston Saturday. Obviously, in the first game, Kansas held home court, beat Houston in a really good basketball game. Ken Pom favors Houston by 10 points. If you look at Kansas in their last couple road games here, loss at Baylor, win at Oklahoma, loss at Texas Tech, loss at Kansas State, loss at Iowa State, loss at West Virginia, loss at UCF. They've pretty much lost every game on the road this season in the Big 12 play. Peyton, I'll let you start first. What are you looking at Saturday when the Jayhawks visit Houston?
Houston wins. Trevor, go ahead.
Is that what you're going to say?
There's too much riding. There's too much riding on this game. Kansas can't win on the road. Kansas can't win on the road. There's too much riding on this game for Houston. It's a revenge game. More importantly, we went to Allen Fieldhouse and we beat the shit out of them pretty much. And then you mentioned it. They've already clinched a share of their regular season title. They've got 3 losses. Iowa State's got 4. If they lose this game, then they'll
Iowa State would have a chance.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
If they win this game, then they clinch it outright. It doesn't even matter what Iowa State does against Kansas State. So there's too much riding on this game for Houston. They've got the better team. And it's going to be at their place, and it's going to be really fucking difficult to win that game. I will say, if they are a 10-point favorite, probably bet on Kansas.
I would, yeah.
That's good value.
Good value. Bet on Kansas. But I do think Houston wins this game.
Take the plus 10, yeah. I
do think Houston wins.
Trev, I agree with that. I would take the plus 10, but go ahead. I know what you're going to say and who you're going to predict. I think this is a clean sweep, but I want to hear your thoughts on the game.
Am I that predictable?
Yeah, you are.
Really, look, I knew that Peyton was kind of like just getting out of the way, and it's like, look, I'm not going to spread Houston propaganda. That's not what I'm here to do, because I think I've made that clear this year. I also wanted to be known that they have technically already clinched the Big 12. They tweeted it 20 hours ago, so it's actually the regular season is irrelevant now to them. They've already clinched that title. I just want to sit here and tell you the only propaganda I'm going to put out there is that for this to be their first year in the best conference in college basketball, people had all the doubts, including you two, had all the doubts in the world about why certain teams couldn't be up here and they prove their own. They won the freaking Big 12 regular season title, right? I understand the head-to-head against Kansas. I get it. Like, it happened, and it's not going to change that result. Obviously, they can split the season series, and I think, in the tournament setting, I think we know what I would say I would lean towards on that one. But my point is Houston's an incredible team, and adversity, injuries, season-ending injuries for two different guys. Like, Coach Kelvin Sampson deserved every bit of credit in the world for this championship for the regular season championship. And this team going into the Kansas game has everything to play for, right? Regardless of that, is my point. How I'm landing the plane.
Maybe an overall number one. Maybe
overall number one. They pretty much already have it. It's just a matter of locking it up. And obviously putting the Big 12 would absolutely do that. My point is they know that Kansas game hurt, and they know that they can learn from that, even if it is a different team with some injuries. And I think they do win. I'm not touching -10 at all. I'm just not. But this team can win. The Fertitta Center is a really small, tight-knit venue, and I think it'll be one of the loudest places of the weekend.
I will say the only concern I have for Houston, not only in this game, but as we move forward in the next couple weeks, tournament time, the injuries are starting to pile up, and they're pretty key guys like Javier Francis. I've never heard an injury report, but I know he got hurt the other night. Joseph Tugler had foot surgery. Who knows how long he's out, if it's indefinite. Obviously, Terrence Arsenault has been injured. Injuries, I mean, I hope not. You never want to see anybody get injured. But they're one more injury away, or like suspension or something. God forbid it's Sheed or Cryer. But if like Juwan Roberts or Emmanuel Sharp or one of these guys, Malik Wilson even coming off the bench, Damian Dunn, you get the point. They're one more injury or suspension away from being very thin. And in the NCAA tournament, you got to have some depth because foul trouble and everything. That would be my one concern for Houston. I think we're going clean sweep. I think Houston holds home court, gets the revenge on Kansas in this game. I think it's going to be much tighter than what Ken Pom predicts. They've got it a 10-point spread. I see Kansas. Bill Self is his best when his back's against the wall. Anytime Kansas, when they won the title a couple years ago, although they were a higher seed, they weren't one of the favorites coming in to win that thing. Like, everybody else thought it would be like Gonzaga or Duke or whoever. Baylor got knocked out by North Carolina. Kansas won a title. Kansas does really well when Bill Self is kind of doubted and the underdog in the rare occasion. So I expect Kansas to come in, give one hell of a fight, pound it inside to Hunter Dickinson. They need Kevin McCullough, obviously, to play well. They need him to play well. They need DeJuan Harris to actually look to score. He can't be only a pass-first point guard in these type of games, especially the way Houston blitzes ball screens and dribble handoffs. And I think if Kansas wins, it's going to be because a guy like Johnny Furphy has a career night. With that being said, like I mentioned earlier, I think Houston wins this game, probably like a 4 or 5 point game at the end. When we preview the Big 12 Conference Tournament on Sunday's episode, I will not be surprised if we get the rubber match, and I will not be surprised if Kansas wins, because that tournament is always in Kansas City, Missouri, and that isn't Kansas Jayhawk territory. We'll save that for another show. But with this game, I think it's a clean sweep. I think Houston wins, but I think Kansas keeps it very close.
I won't be there. I won't be there Sunday. So just a big picture thing for me to put out there for Kansas is like, this is the most conference losses since 1988. Mm-hmm. Like, if that isn't back against the wall, I don't know what to tell you. But it also tells me that I have complete and utter doubts. Like, I mean, we've addressed them many times this year, even though all of a sudden Nick Timberlake had 20 something the other night, right? Like, we see these things where I can't, one day I'm going to feel one way and one way I'm going to feel the other, which is not something I think is conducive to making a national championship run, which even coming into the year, we thought they probably were capable of doing. And then cool note that Houston is going to be honoring Jim Nance at halftime of that game.
Oh, that's cool.
Really cool. That's cool.
That's really cool.
One more thing, and then we can move on. The only thing I disagree with what Josh just said is that Johnny Furphy has to be the difference maker for Kansas. I completely disagree. Nick Timberlake has to be the guy for Kansas. He has to be. And that's why I am not confident going into Houston to win this game. Because I don't trust he can do what he did against Kansas State. Don't trust it at all. But if he does, Kansas probably wins this game.
Listen, I agree 100% with that. If Timberlake has, let's say, he doesn't have to have 20-some, but if he has like 14 or 15, that's probably a really good sign for Kansas if he was to have a breakout game. But Houston, especially at home, they've not lost at home all year. Their 3 losses came on the road. I don't think they're losing this one.
We know what changed that game last time, right? Like we talked about it, right? Kansas had an attack plan, and you laid it out really, really well. But like Houston can still easily, very, very. I want to make that very clear as the Houston person out of the three of us, the most is it's in a coaching adjustment thing, right? Houston's obviously spent the last 3 weeks figuring out what they can do to beat Kansas, right? Obviously, that's not what you do, but they know that there are things they had to improve upon when Kansas adjusted in the second half there and forced them into a perimeter team. It's going to be a coaching battle. Obviously, these are incredible coaches. I think Bill Self logistically might still be the better coach, right? But
I think he's still the best coach in college basketball, yeah.
Right. From an X's and O's standpoint, going against somebody, yeah, I'm probably going to take him. The point is Kevin Sampson has to figure out how to adjust because Kansas is going to come prepared. That is not the question.
I will be curious. We got to move on, but I will be curious. Houston, do they stay with the blitz against Kansas? Because it didn't work out in game 1. Do they adjust? And maybe there's ways you can fake the blitz, almost like in football where you can disguise blitzes. How do they defend that? Because DeJuan Harris sometimes is almost untrappable. Like he really is. And that could open up for McCullough on the wing, driving lines. And the other thing, Kansas in that game pulled Dickinson away from the rim a lot to open the floor in the middle up. It's going to be really interesting. But I think we've all got Houston to win this game. Let's move on. Kentucky has an opportunity to maybe get up to and finish as the second seed in SEC tournament. But regardless, avoid that dreaded Thursday game. We've talked about all these conference tournaments, how important it is to get the double bye. Destiny's in their own hands. They're playing well. They've now, after last night's game against Vanderbilt, they've now won 6 of their last 7. And the reason it's not 7 in a row is because LSU hit a game winner at home. We know Kentucky's offense, but we know what happened a month ago, February 3rd, when Tennessee came to Rupp Arena. They completely punked them around. They punked them around. They made big shots. They did anything they wanted to do in this game. Peyton, the last couple times Kentucky has been the underdog. If you remember even last year, they were struggling. Didn't know if they were even a tournament team. They were like a 12-point underdog, went to Tennessee and put a beating on them. I don't think there'll be a 12-point underdog on Saturday. It's going to be much closer, even though KenPom has it 9 for Tennessee. I think it's going to be a very close game, a very different matchup than the first one, but it's still Tennessee and their elite defense playing at home. Talk us through this. How do you see this game playing out?
You ready for this? Hold on to your seats, because if Kentucky goes into Thompson-Boling Arena and beats Tennessee, I don't care how they do it. I don't care if they do it by offense, scoring 100 points. I don't care if they beat them by 30, beat them by 1 point, hits a game winner late. I don't care. If Kentucky goes into Thompson-Boling Arena and beats Tennessee, I am picking Kentucky to win the national championship. I am telling you right now, because for one, it would show me that they are consistent enough that they can win 6 games straight in March. They should have already been on a 4-game winning streak now. Should be a 6-game winning streak already if the LSU game didn't happen.
7.
Oh, yeah, great. Even put my point even more. It doesn't matter. 5, 4, 6, 7. They can definitely win 6 straight in March if they win this game. And I think they will. I think Kentucky goes into Thompson-Boling Arena, and I think Kentucky pulls it out. The guards are just playing really well right now. The presence down low in the front court, they're starting to get some momentum. Aaron Bradshaw starting to step up. DJ Wagner starting to, at some point in time, somehow became a 3-point shooter this last month. Last couple of games, which is incredible for them. And then you have Big Z doing what he's doing last couple of games. And the most important thing, forget the X's and O's, forget defense, forget all of this. I mentioned with UConn, confidence travels. Yep. Confidence travels no matter where you're at.
Momentum's a real thing in sports.
Momentum is a real thing. It's a hell of a drug. They are confident right now. The momentum's picking up. They just need a couple stops. Just a couple. They don't need to stop them, hold them down to like 65 points in this game. No. They just need 2 stops. 2 stops late in the stretch. And Kentucky wins this game, and I think the Cats will win.
Trevor, Tennessee did punk Kentucky in the first matchup in Rupp Arena, but Kentucky still put up 92. So they were able to score against this elite defense. And if you look, Kentucky in the last, I forget who to give credit to, but I seen a stat the other day. Essentially, since the Gonzaga loss on February 10th, even though it doesn't look like it a lot of times, you go to the Arkansas game last weekend, But since the Gonzaga loss, Kentucky's had like a top 60 defense in KenPom. Or whoever it was, Torvik or whoever it was, not KenPom, but like Torvik, one of those metrics. Basically in the last month of the year, defensive analytic wise, they've had like a top 60, top 50 defense in college basketball. I hate this narrative. Yes, they give up layups and all this stuff. I hate when people flat out say they can't play defense because that's not accurate. When they play defense, they'll make teams like Alabama and Arkansas and all these teams go for 4, 5, 6 minutes where they don't even get a shot up or like a missed buckets or whatever. They don't score. And playing a team like Kentucky, if you go scoreless for like a 5-minute drought, the way they score, it's a death sentence. I think I know who you're going to pick, but I am curious to hear how you lay it out.
There's a lot to unpack there because I had a whole answer prepared based off what Peyton said. Now there's some other things thrown in there. It's not about that they can't play defense. I'm not even going to tell you that, right? It's about that they can't play it consistently enough. And this is a Tennessee team that we already talked about earlier. It can keep up. So why can't this be the same exact result? Talking about momentum was the point I was going to get at. I'll take the team that is on a win streak since February 14th. Their last loss for Tennessee was at Texas A&M. They've beaten Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Texas A&M, and then in the last 3 games, Auburn, at Alabama, at South Carolina. I'm going to take a team talking about momentum. It can go both sides, so it's kind of like, momentum's a thing. Yeah, both teams have incredible momentum right now.
No, they're both hot right now. Yeah.
I can't tell you watching what I watched on February 3rd and tell you that there's not a single sliver of my conscience that can pick Kentucky because Tennessee has already proven they put up 103 points for crying out loud, regardless if the defense is 60th in some metric. The point I'm making is Tennessee is built to win either game any way they want and can. They beat Auburn scoring 92. They beat Alabama, who's a perennial consistent best offense in the country for most of the year. They held them to 74. They scored 81. They beat South Carolina on the road and only scored 66. They can win any game in any way they want. And I know Kentucky's been playing great lately, but Tennessee's the better team more consistently, more lately, regardless. And I'm picking Tennessee.
And I think that's fair. The difference maker, because Kentucky ironically defended Dalton Connect better than almost anybody in the conference has. In a way, outside maybe that South Carolina game when South Carolina beat them. Connect didn't have a great game. It was the other pieces we talked about. In particular, Josiah Jordan-James had an incredible game. He had 24 points. He hit 4 3-point shots in that game. Since then, he's hit 2, 0, 1, 3, 0, 0, 0, 0, 3, and 0. The reason I say that is he's not an all-time, like he's not a guy that's going to hit 4 threes per game. So he was left open. He hit shots. If he takes some same shots on Saturday and misses, you can wipe off 12 points off the board instantly. Kentucky won that game in February. That's how different these margins are. Guys hit shots. I say this all the time. You can play the worst defense and give everybody wide open shots, but if they don't make them, it doesn't matter. Also, what Tennessee did is they crashed the glass really hard on Kentucky to end up with 18 offensive rebounds. So there's fine margins. Obviously, everybody talks about the defense, and the defense has to improve. But it's like we've talked about here lately. We talked about with Brandon Ramsey on Sunday's episode. Kentucky's at that point of the year where they don't need to play great defense. They just need to get you in spurts of playing good defense. If you can get 2 or 3 defensive kills in this game, then that's enough to let your offense just go on heaters like we know they can. I know this sounds crazy because I picked Tennessee back in Rupp Arena back on February 3rd. I'm not above picking Kentucky to lose if I think they're going to lose. But I'm also not shy of telling you I think they're going to win and standing behind that. Something in my gut tells me this team is starting to figure stuff out. Cal has shrunk his rotation since then. Back then, he was trying to play like 11 dudes. Now he essentially, depending on who plays well at the big man spot, plays 8. I'm going Kentucky to win. I think they're going on a heater, and I think Tennessee, whether it's missing shots or Kentucky's defense tightens up, I think somewhere in that second half, Tennessee goes on a stretch where they're like 4.5 minutes where they don't score, and Kentucky goes on like a 19-2 run, and that's all it needs. I'm going Kentucky on the upset, winning in Thompson Bowling on Saturday. There's something that tells me that their guards, this is Rob Dillingham shine time, and I could see Dilly going for 25 plus.
Here's a stat for you. We all like stats. Everybody likes stats. In the last 25 years, dating back since once Ken Palm came out, 1999 to 2024. You know how many times Kentucky's got swept by Tennessee in the regular season? Only twice.
Oh.
Only twice. 1999 was the first time, at least on Ken Palm. I can't go back any further without actually doing more research. 1999 was the first time, and 2018. The only two times that Kentucky's been swept by Tennessee. I think that should matter. This is a revenge game. I've already said what I needed to say. I just want to throw that stat out there.
Let's move on. And this is the rivalry. I admitted it the first go around because Louisville is down. I mean, you can't argue this isn't the best rivalry in college basketball right now. And whatever. North Carolina going on the road to Duke. We've already talked about what's at stake here. Carolina's already guaranteed at least a share of the ACC conference. Duke, with a win, could get a share, and we have these two teams tied in the regular season for the ACC title. North Carolina is on a heater. Duke is playing so much better right now. They've got that one loss to Wake Forest, but they have been on a hell of a roll and since the month of February really started. Trevor, this is your neck of the woods. You know this game inside and out better. Can Duke get the revenge and hold home court and take down North Carolina to really solidify their spot as potentially like the number 1-2 seed or a really high 2 seed right now?
Yeah, honestly, I appreciate the compliment, but I probably should be canceled because the amount of times I missed this game from a prediction standpoint is probably nauseating. I will say, just funny thing to think about. You mentioned could be still, y'all are still funny about like not calling it the actual greatest rivalry. It's not even the oldest. Purdue and Indiana is 1907. Kansas and Kansas State is 1901. North Carolina, and Duke are not even the oldest rivalry in college basketball, and it's still the best. So anyway, enough of that. From a game standpoint, I honestly am not. I think I'm undervaluing Duke. I think I'm undervaluing Duke as a whole.
Well.
They're playing incredibly well. They're both 24-6. Duke's actually rated higher in KenPom. But at the end of the day, Peyton's like, here's a stat for you. We all love stats. I love what my eyes tell me more because I feel like at the end of the day, I use the stats to determine what I use with my eyes. I still think North Carolina's the better team. I still think I still think there's a marginal gap. I don't think it's a huge marginal gap, but I think North Carolina's better. I get this game's on the road, and that can throw a wrench in anything when you're playing at Cameron Indoor. But my point is I can't fathom that these teams are so close statistically. Because I've watched Duke a lot this year. I've watched North Carolina a lot this year. I've watched North Carolina lose at home to Clemson, for crying out loud. And I still think North Carolina is a better team, right? I've seen them at their worst, even against a good Clemson team at the time. RJ Davis can cement his he can absolutely cement his North Carolina legacy by having a legacy game in this moment at Cameron Indoor. To finish out his career would be an absolutely the most incredible thing, and I think that probably happens. They have the advantage in the guard department. If he can beat Roach, they've played each other enough. The guards are too young, I think, for Duke a little bit, even though I think McCain's coming to his own from a confidence standpoint. And without going super into detail with statistics, I think North Carolina's the better team. I think they win on the road.
Peyton, I'm going to give you one key player here. Against North Carolina in the loss in the first go-around, he had 23. Since then, he's had 11, 11, 17, 35. He had a 7-point game and a win against Miami.
McCain.
Bounced back with 15, 14, 7, and 16. Jared McCain needs more love for all freshmen of the year, not only ACC, but nationally. He's been phenomenal as the year gets on, too. He can make the three-point shot, probably their most athletic player end-to-end. I like Jared McCain to have a breakout game in this game, Peyton. You talk about cementing RJ Davis's North Carolina legacy. I think this is what puts Jared McCain in the hearts and minds forever of Duke fans. I got Duke winning this game, and I got Jared McCain going for a monster game. I think he is ready for the moment finally. I could see him having an all-timer like 30 and 12 or something crazy, hitting a bunch of threes. I think Duke wins this game on the back of Jared McCain, Peyton.
I think Duke's definitely very capable of winning this game. I mean, it's a rivalry game for crying out loud. Being at home, they're going to have the fan. The Cameron Crazy is going wild for them.
They're favored by 4.
Yeah, they're favored by 4. I take North Carolina on that. I do agree with Trav. I think North Carolina's the better team. They're playing for seeding to be that top 2 seed in the bracket this season. They've got a lot. Probably should be a number 1, maybe. We'll see. There's still a lot going on.
Was my only point earlier. They can still get it. Arizona has to lose the Pac-12, which is a hard ask, and then Tennessee has to lose in like the semifinals, probably the SEC championship.
I do think North Carolina goes into Cameron Indoor, and I do think they sweep them this year. I really like this North Carolina squad. I think they got a lot going on for them. Their experience is going to be too much for Duke. And if you're talking about players, I still think Cormac Ryan is going to be the guy for North Carolina. He's going to come in there and he's going to silence the crowd, hit some big shots, specifically late down the stretch. And then RJ Davis is going to do what he does. And obviously, Armando Bacach is going to eat Filipowski down low. They're not going to have an answer for him down in the paint at all. He's probably going to go for like 18 and like 15 in this game. So North Carolina wins.
I'm not going to reread it, but the stats will tell us that North Carolina hasn't lost this game when they're tied for the regular season. So I'll just leave it out there.
I mean, know this time.
It's real. It's real, right? Like, I mean, it's not real. Like I'm not spewing out like, oh, it's only what happens when the sun is setting. It's like it's not some pick stat, right? Like since 2001, they have not lost a regular season title clinching game against Duke. It doesn't make any sense.
Happen.
Hey, there's a first time for everything, and I just there's something about way Duke's playing, especially being at home. I think the Dukies are going to win, and I love Jared McCain. What a crazy year he's had as a freshman. Real quick, we're not going to deep dive in all of them. I just want to get your predictions since these championships will take place either this weekend or on the Monday after. I want to just hear, we'll go through these mid-major conferences. Tell me who you think wins and gets the automatic bid. We'll start with Trevor in the Missouri Valley Conference Championship. That'll be on Sunday, probably about the time we'll be recording Sunday, but I want to hear the prediction now. Is it Drake? Is it Indiana State, Bradley, or somebody else coming up and stealing a bid?
I'm just going to stick to my Jerome that we'll get to at the end in the shout-outs. Indiana State. Indiana State's the best team in this conference. I know that Drake is really, really good as well, but 5 guys averaging double figures. Robbie Avila, Josh Schertz is an incredible coach. The 5-out offense. They are an incredible team, and not a single team in March Madness wants to see them.
I agree. Same thing. I can't say it better myself.
Man, I wish we wouldn't get copyrighted here because I played back-to-back by who? Drizzy Drake. I think Drake wins. I picked it last time on the last episode. I think Drake wins.
You're going to again
back-to-back.
They got a tough draw last year. I mean, I didn't really think about it until I was looking at some stuff about the Missouri Valley yesterday, and that final against Miami was less than 10. Like, they got a really tough draw, and they could have beaten anybody other than Miami, I think, in that side of the bracket last year. So definitely, I'm not saying Miami. It's out. It's not out of the realm of possibility again, but I think Indiana State's the best team for a reason.
I picked Drake to beat Miami as a 12-5 last year, by the way. Ohio Valley Conference Championship. Peyton and I will be there Saturday night. You will have all the live coverage from Evansville, from the Ford Center down in Evansville for the OVC Championship. Just stay tuned to the socials, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that. We'll have a lot of fun stuff. Who do you think, Trevor, that Peyton and I will get to see punch their bid to the NCAA championship from the OVC?
It's Morehead State. I kind of undervalue. I think people undervalue the ability to play tough competition earlier in the year. I actually led my podcast this morning with my Jerome picks and my explanation, and Morehead State was my pick, so that's what I'll leave it with. But Morehead State played an incredible, and I'm pulling it up now, an incredible non-con early on. They played Purdue, they played Penn State, they played Austin Peay, who we talked about, Chattanooga, Indiana, Alabama, and the Indiana game was a 1-point loss at Indiana. So Morehead State's played tough competition, and I think that does help you prepare. I know they went on a little streak here where they lost against Little Rock, Tennessee Martin, and Southern Indiana. But otherwise, they've been incredible in conference play, and I think they're an undervalued 3 seed, so I went with Morehead State.
Peyton, the conference kicks off tonight. As we record, Morehead State opens up with SIU Edwardsville. Who are you going with that we see win on Saturday night?
I said last Sunday I had Little Rock taking on Morehead State in the final, and I think Little Rock wins. They're on a 9-game winning streak, and who did they beat in that 9-game winning streak? They beat Morehead State by 1. It was a close game, but they beat Morehead State. And I think overall, I just think they got more pieces, and I think they're going to make the plays down the stretch. I think Little Rock wins this league.
I'm sticking with Morehead State. Trev talks a lot about the Jerome. I picked Morehead State. I'm sticking with it. The ASun, we talked about that. The semifinals are tonight, with the final being here in the next couple days. I'm staying with Stetson. Who do you guys have real quick?
Stetson. Same here.
Sweep on the Stetson. Big South. Peyton, who's going to win the Big South championship and punch their bid to the NCAA tournament?
Oh, shit.
This is so hard. There's like 4 teams that can win it. It's so hard.
You said High Point on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with High Point because I also picked them in my Jerome picks as well. So I'm gonna stick with High Point.
4 guys averaging more than 12.5 points per game for High Point. They score in the 80s. They have 3 of the best guards in the conference on the same team. UNC Asheville is obviously the pick here if you're trying to be pretty and try to pick a team that is more seasoned for this moment. Drew Pember, 2-time player of the year. They obviously made it last year, got an absolutely unlucky draw as that, 15 against a 1 or 16 against a 1 or 2, 15, whatever it was. They played Kansas,
Houston,
I believe,
for
Houston.
Right?
Kansas,
yeah,
I think. I think it was Kansas at like 11 o'clock at night or something stupid.
Remember.
Yeah.
But regardless, I inquired with some folks that cover the Big South because I've watched enough of these games. I am beating myself up not getting up to that new arena in High Point earlier this year against Longwood, but it is what it is. I went with High Point as well. I'm not changing the pick, even though Drew Pember is going to have an incredible tournament.
I'm going with High Point as well. And then
I'll
throw this one in. I'll throw this one in real quick. Trev, you will be there in Washington, D.C. You just dropped an article with Zach Penrice today covering this conference tournament. Go ahead. When you look at the CAA, who do you see coming out of that?
So the Jerome statistics would tell you that it is Charleston's tournament to lose. 46.26% of people, 662 submissions for Charleston. The second most submissions was not the 1 seed or not the 2 seed. Don't know why that happened. Not the 3 seed. It was the 4-seeded UNC Wilmington.
That's who I went with.
Seahawks. And here's why I'll tell you. I'll save the full recap. People can go read it or save the full prediction. But they have 4 things. 4 things that you can win games, not only in the CAA tournament, but also into March. In March Madness, I said to you guys multiple times this year, they are the only team in this conference that I think that can absolutely win a game in March Madness. I say absolutely. I know that discredits Charleston a little bit there, but their offense, if they run into a defensive stout team, they're going to be able to be slowed down, even though they score so many points. They have Trezarian White, best player on the floor in almost any game. They have an incredible coach. They have dynamic guards, and they have a balanced offense. And I think UNCW wins it. And then I'll get it to my CAA bowl prediction. My bowl prediction that we have in the close is actually about the CAA as well.
I've got Peyton. I've got UNC Wilmington and my Jerome as well. I've seen them not in person, but I've seen them go into Rupp Arena and not be afraid of the moment, beat Kentucky by 7. They have guards that made every shot contested, which translates to March when you're late in the game. The nerves kick in. Trezarian White, Shaquem Phillips was phenomenal. They've got dudes that can play. They're not the biggest in height, but they're long and athletic. They got a lot of dudes who are like 6'7". They play a faster tempo. Well, I'm sorry, they can play fast. They prefer playing slow, but they can get up and down with athletes is what I meant to say. They played a good non-con. They went on the road to Arkansas. They played good teams in the CAA. They've got a good offense, and they don't turn the ball over. They're third in turnover percentage. Number 1 in steal percentage on offense means basically they just take care of the basketball, and they've got a good offense. I think UNC Wilmington comes out, and I'm with Trev. I think Takeo Siddle's team could win a game in March depending on the matchup.
Oh, shit. I want to go with the clean sweep and go with Wilmington because the point you just made, it was the point I was about to make, how they just take care of the ball. They don't turn the ball over too much, which is very important. But also, I think a stat to keep in mind, if the final is Charleston and UNC Wilmington has swept them this year in the regular season. It is. I mentioned it last Sunday. It is hard as fuck to beat a team 3 times in a row.
It is.
If that's the final, I think Charleston wins. I'm going to pick Charleston anyways. Charleston wins.
It blows. I understand the playing. I'm not going to let the rant happen. I promise. We're almost done. But people, the 3-time thing, I'd love someone to actually pull the stats all time on that. Like, I think it gets overblown, right? It gets brought up so much. Like, JMU is obviously an incredible team, but, like, no one is picking App State for crying out loud. They're the best team in that conference.
I picked Southern Miss.
And they beat, I know, but better Jerome points for you there as
right.
well. But the point being is that App State is the best team in that conference. I saw them live. I saw them beat Auburn on their home floor. I promise you, JMU was an incredible story earlier this year. All 3 of us voted them for top 25 at one point. But I know we're getting on a Sunbelt tangent, but I'm using them as the example. That's been the most famous beat a team 3-time example. But I just think that sometimes gets overblown. UNCW can beat Charleston because they did exactly what I said earlier. They slowed Charleston down and forced them into a half-court team, and it's really, really tough to win that way for them. I will say this. This is through February 23rd. This is the last stat sheet I got from the SID for UNCW. 16-2 when UNCW scores at least 75 points. At that time, their only losses were Arkansas and Stony Brook. So if they score 75, they're going to beat you probably. They're 10th nationally in bench scoring, and then they're top 20 in free throw rate in the country, and I think that has actually gone up. So they're an incredible free throw shooting team on top of everything we've already said.
Well, on that point, because I've always been in agreement to it is very hard, and you hear coaches talking about it all the time, beat a team 3 times in 1 year, and even dating back to like middle school. Like, it's hard beating a team, but I do understand what you're saying too. I mean, if you're just a better team, it doesn't matter, you're the better team. But there is something to that. Have to play a team 3 times and have to beat them 3 times. There is something to that. So I think both points are fair. Let's start winding this thing and landing the ship here. We haven't done this pretty much all year, and I thought about it listening to an old episode. We used to bank on it all the time. For new listeners and watching us right now, bank on a segment we had done for 5 years, and it is a bold prediction. The bolder, the better. We used to do this all the time. We had T-shirts for it, for crying out loud. I've got one in my closet. So bank on it for the final weekend of the regular season and championship Saturday, Sunday for some of these conferences we've already talked about. And I'll show you exactly what we mean by bold prediction here, and I will kick things off. I think when you look at the weekend and all the different games that are coming up, obviously we've talked about a lot of different versions of them, a lot of different things going on with conference championships coming up and everything we've already previewed. My bold prediction, and I picked them to win, and I'm doubling down on it. Not only does Kentucky beat Tennessee, they beat them by 10 plus. That's my bank on it this week.
I'm going to be honest, when he was starting that, I didn't know exactly where he was going to go. I thought he was going to say, like,
10 plus.
Like, there's going to be
run
like,
them out the building.
All right, Peyton and I are going to go. You get a redo. All right, come up with one better in the next 5 minutes because I cannot. That's the 10 points. You should have said 15 or 20 for crying out loud. When you hear mine, when you hear mine, you should have picked them by 25.
You know what? Okay, fine. I'll add to it. 15 plus then. Bank on it. They run them out the building. 15 plus. Kentucky is going to run them out of the building. 15 plus. Bank on it.
Better. Thank you. I like 10. Like, oh my God. I was like, when you started, I was the same way. I know you're a fan.
If you think about it, though, hey, listen, they're a 9-point underdog. So honestly, 10's plus is kind of outrageous if you think about it. So
they beat Alabama by freaking 40. They can beat any. They could. That would have been nuts too, obviously. But listen,
I'll appease you guys. Technically, though, mine. Go ahead. A 15.
I'm glad that Peyton agreed with me. I'm glad.
Yeah, I didn't know where he was going with that, and then he said that. And listen, I thought he was going to say something about conference tournaments, like there's going to be multiple bid stealers or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, that's what I thought he was going with that.
This is the first time all year we've done it. I'm easing my way back into bank.
Yeah,
go ahead, Peyton.
Why do we bring this shit back? By the way,
I love it.
I hate it. I hate it.
Peyton's overall record in 5
is like 4 and like 60.
It's been pretty bad.
I'm like Louisville under Kenny Payne these last 2 years.
Cook did great on him. The Cook would always usually hit a bank on it. But go ahead. We got to wrap this up. Come on.
I got mine. Here's a little fun one for you. And it's definitely bold. Virginia in the last regular season game, they scored a total of 75 points. 75 points. And this Tennessee-Kentucky game, Antonio Reeves and Rob Dillingham combined is going to score more than Virginia's whole fucking team did in the last regular season game. Because in the last 3 games of Kentucky, they've put up like over 327 points or something like that. Virginia scored the last 3 games for Kentucky, they've scored more than Virginia did in 3 games or some shit like that. What the fuck was it? It was some wild stat. So 75 points is what Virginia scored against Louisville in the last regular season game. Rob Dillingham and Tony Weems combined is going to score more than Virginia did in the last game.
If they do that, my bank on it hits then. Yes. Because if they combine for 75 plus between those two, my bank on it hits for sure.
I'm not sure that's bold either. I'm making sure Virginia fans hear it from me. All right. Well, then I clearly brought the dumbest one to the table by far. Let me make sure I read it correctly.
That's what this is for, though. It's fun.
If you had just put bank on it and then didn't put the bold prediction on the week, because this is my first time doing a bank on it.
And by the way, congratulations on bank on it for the first time.
Yeah, thank you. I don't. This is a long. If this was a Vegas odds, it's probably plus 15,000. I'm glad that you included bold prediction for the weekend because the way I would have interpreted the name bank on it was like what's something you're super confident in that's not bold, just a pick. And I'm glad you clarified. I love the name still. The 11 seed, I told you I'd come back to the CAA somehow. The 11 seeded Elon Phoenix will make it to Monday of the CAA championship. And I'll actually give you a really good reason why. They're going to play, unfortunately. I'm going to miss the game. Getting my train comes into DC really late or right before that game starts on tomorrow. They play Hampton, Delaware, and Hofstra. You want to guess the 3 of their 6 or 7 conference wins this year against who? Hampton, Delaware, and Hofstra. So they literally got the perfect lineup to beat Hampton again, to beat Delaware as a 6 versus 11, and then Hofstra obviously has Tyler Thomas and the CAA Player of the Year. That's going to be a really hard game for them, but they've already done it. Why can't they do it again? Why can't they be Zach Penrice? If that happens, I want an Elon Phoenix tweet from DC.
I love that, dude. That's, by the way, congratulations. We will do more bank on it. It's my bad. I've been wrapped up. I completely forgot about it to listen to an old episode from like 3 years ago. We love bank on it. Like I said, we have merchandise, use old merchandise from it. I love bank on it. This will become a regular segment again. Shout outs, and then let's get the hell out of here. Trev, I know you said you had a shout out. Go ahead with it.
This isn't a shout out. Well, I do, but this happened right before we started recording. Detroit Mercy parted ways with Mike Davis after a 1-31 record. Spent 6 seasons at the helm of Detroit Mercy. That's not a shout out. I guess shout out to their AD for making that decision. The actual shout out now is shout out to Andrew Weatherman for keeping the Jerome tradition alive. I was unaware that the Jerome was a thing, and why did I not know about this sooner? It's the coolest thing ever. Like, I don't even know if there's a prize involved. I didn't really know. I know there's a leaderboard.
I don't think so. I think it's just bragging rights. I think.
Shout out to Chris the Dinga. Dinga DeRozan?
Dinga.
Yeah. Shout out to him for at one point he was like ridiculously high rated nationally. So shout out to him from House. Shout out to Andrew Weatherman for keeping the Jerome tradition alive. I've already told him thank you multiple times, but yeah, it's such an incredible thing. And shout out to Will for making the graphics for us.
Peyton?
Yeah, I've got 2. They're not actual, like, really shout-outs, but I'll shout them. I'll do it anyways. Yeah, shout out to Chris Dedinga, what the hell his name is, for having to deal with DeRosa all the fucking time. Shout out to him. That's a pain in the ass, I know. So shout out to him. I'm probably sure he's bitching about Georgetown. Speaking of Georgetown, good transition into my next shout out. Shout out to anybody who watched all of our videos this week for the YouTube show. For the top 10 favorite March moments. My number 10 was, speaking of Georgetown, was Georgetown getting beat by Florida Gulf Coast. I'm sure DeRosa loves that. His boys getting beat and then them going on to Sweet 16, which at the time was the first 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. But shout out to anybody who watches those videos. We're going to start pumping out content a lot more. We got a lot of stuff planned coming up in the next couple of weeks leading up to Selection Sunday. A lot of stuff that's happening. You'll be seeing some cool graphics I've been working on for the YouTube videos. I'm excited to get it going. Shout out to anybody who watches that and shared and likes it. And I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Shout out to all of our live viewers. This has been our most consistent number we've had on a video all year, and our videos have been doing really well. So from the bottom of all of our hearts, I think I can speak for all of us. Thank you. We appreciate the hell out of you. How about this one? It's going on live as we record. Shout out Pepperdine. This is not a typo, and men's college basketball is up 56-9 on Pacific at halftime. For those watching, here is the screenshot. 56-9 in men's college basketball at halftime. Shout out Pepperdine, which goes back to the beginning of the show. They got let go of Lorenzo Romar, and all of a sudden they open up the best offense in college basketball and defense. Shout out Pepperdine.
Coach is getting fired and teams turning it around this year. It's a weird trend.
Yeah,
Ohio State. Old Dominion got Jeff Jones retired because of health, and they went on some stupid run in the Sun Belt. So whatever, man, this is nuts.
And then my last one, it's kind of a
Kenny Payne. Let's go on the run.
That's
Detroit. I was going to say Detroit Mercy. I was actually going to say Detroit Mercy makes the Horizon League championship. There's your bet or bank on it right there.
I was getting ready to say. Shout out Kenny Payne for hosting a top 15 recruit. Only for him to not even really be going to Louisville on a recruiting visit, but supposedly him getting offered some compensation to stop by for 30 minutes on his way to Lexington last night to see the team he was really going down to see. So shout out KP for the photo op, boy. You're doing well. And all kidding aside, seriously, thank you.
Give Nolan the team already, for crying out loud. God bless America.
He's starting a blog now. He's so fed up with the season. He's doing a blog that he promoted. It's
Who,
crazy.
Peyton? Who, Peyton?
No, Nolan Smith. He promoted it on his Twitter the other day.
What?
Shout out to everybody. Seriously, yeah, he's doing a blog where he's doing he said, I'll come follow along on my journey where I talk about basketball, life, He's fed up with it, dude. I mean, in all seriousness aside, or all joking aside, thank you to everybody who watched and followed along with this. Thank you to when you listen to this podcast for liking it, listening, download, subscribing. Like Peyton said, go follow the Twitter, go follow the Twitter, go follow the YouTube, watch those videos. They're really great. Go follow the new TikTok. We've got ton of content coming out just that's going to blow your mind leading into March Madness and beyond. So thank you guys from everybody here at the ECB team. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 180. And until Sunday, we will come to you. When we get back from the OVC title game, we will have bids punched. It's 10 days away from Selection Sunday, best time of the year. Thank you guys all for enjoying or listening to this episode. And we hope we will catch you guys down the road on Sunday. Until then, we'll catch you down the road. See ya.
Onions!